The gunshot echoed through the crowded main street of Redemption Springs, silencing the usual bustle of the small Montana town on that scorching July afternoon in 1875. Josephine Lawson froze, her trembling hands still clutching the loaf of bread she'd been accused of stealing, as Sheriff Tanner leveled his pistol skyward. "That's enough," the sheriff bellowed, his weathered face flushed with anger. "We'll handle this proper-like, with a trial." Josephine's heart hammered against her ribs. At 22, she'd already endured more hardship than most faced in a lifetime. Orphaned at 16 and forced to make her own way after her uncle's ranch failed, she'd drifted from town to town, taking whatever work she could find. Redemption Springs was supposed to be her fresh start. "I didn't steal it," she said, her voice barely audible over the angry murmurs of the gathering crowd. "Mr. Hoffman gave me credit until payday." The baker, red-faced and indignant, pointed an accusatory finger. "I did no such thing. This woman took that bread when my back was turned." Sheriff Tanner grabbed Josephine's arm. "We'll sort this out at the jailhouse. If she's guilty, then so am I forever." The deep voice cut through the commotion like a knife. The crowd parted as Isaac Adler stepped forward, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the dusty street. The mysterious cowboy had arrived in town just a week prior, taking odd jobs at the livery stable while keeping mostly to himself. "Mr. Adler, this ain't your concern," Sheriff Tanner warned. Isaac's piercing blue eyes remained fixed on Josephine, an inexplicable recognition passing between them though they'd never formally met. "I saw the whole thing," Isaac said firmly. "The lady asked for credit." Hoffman agreed. "Now he's changing his story." "That's a damned lie," Hoffman sputtered. Isaac stepped closer to Josephine, his presence oddly comforting despite his intimidating stature. "Sheriff, if you're taking her to jail, you'll need to take me too. I'll stand by her word." The tension in the air was palpable as Sheriff Tanner assessed the situation. Finally, he released his grip on Josephine's arm. "Fine. I'll give you both till sundown tomorrow to settle this debt with Hoffman, or you'll both face the judge when he comes through next week." As the crowd dispersed, Josephine looked up at the stranger who had come to her defense. "Why would you do that for someone you don't know?" Isaac adjusted his worn Stetson, a ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "Sometimes you just know when someone's telling the truth. Besides, a lady shouldn't face trouble alone." "I'm not sure what to say except thank you, Mr. Adler." "Isaac," he corrected. "And you are?" "Josephine Lawson." "Well, Miss Lawson, it seems we've got ourselves a problem to solve before tomorrow's sunset." With nowhere else to turn and a newfound debt to this enigmatic cowboy, Josephine found herself walking alongside Isaac toward the livery stable where he'd been staying in the hayloft. "I can pay you back," she insisted as they walked. "I start my position as the schoolteacher next Monday. They've given me an advance on my first month's wages." Isaac's eyebrows raised slightly. "A schoolteacher? That explains the books I've seen you carrying." Josephine clutched the disputed bread tighter. "You've noticed me before today?" "Hard not to notice the only person in town who seems more interested in reading than drinking or causing trouble," he replied, leading her to the stable. Inside, the air was cooler, scented with hay and leather. Isaac gestured to a small wooden stool near his modest belongings while he settled on an upturned crate. "So tell me what really happened," he said, offering her his canteen of water. Josephine took a small sip before explaining. "I've been in town 3 days, staying at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house while preparing for the school term. I went to buy bread this morning, but realized I was short on funds. Mr. Hoffman seemed amenable to credit when the shop was empty, but when those wealthy ranchers from the Blackwater property came in, he suddenly changed his tune. I think he didn't want to appear charitable in front of his more prosperous customers." Isaac nodded thoughtfully. "Town like this, reputation means everything to a businessman. Still doesn't make it right to accuse you falsely. Why did you step in? You could have just watched like everyone else." Isaac was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "I've seen too many good people railroaded by those with power or influence. A few years back, my younger sister was accused of something she didn't do. Nobody stood for her then." The pain in his voice was unmistakable. Josephine resisted the urge to reach for his hand. "What happened to her?" she asked gently. "She died in prison waiting for a trial that never came." His jaw tightened. "Typhoid fever took her before justice could be served." I'm so sorry. Isaac shook his head slightly, as if clearing away the memory. It's in the past. What matters now is making sure you don't face the same fate. Redemption Springs needs a schoolteacher more than it needs another injustice. They spent the remainder of the afternoon strategizing. Isaac suggested they speak with Mrs. Peterson, who might vouch for Josephine's character. They also planned to visit the bank in the morning to withdraw the advance on Josephine's teaching salary, settling the debt with Hoffman regardless of whether he'd actually extended credit. As evening approached, Isaac walked Josephine back to the boarding house. The western sky blazed orange and crimson as the sun began its descent behind the distant mountains. "Thank you again," Josephine said at the front porch steps. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't intervened. You strike me as the resourceful type, Miss Lawson. I imagine you would have managed." His confidence in her abilities, despite knowing so little about her, warmed something inside Josephine that had been cold for a very long time. "Nevertheless, I'm grateful. Will I see you tomorrow?" "First light," he promised. "We'll get this sorted." Josephine nodded, suddenly reluctant to part ways. "Good night, Isaac." "Good night, Josephine." As she watched his tall figure retreat down the darkening street, Josephine couldn't explain the peculiar certainty that her life had just changed irrevocably. Morning came with a soft golden light filtering through Josephine's window. She dressed quickly in her most respectable blue dress, pinning her chestnut hair into a neat bun. Her heart fluttered with anticipation that had little to do with resolving the bread incident and everything to do with seeing Isaac again. True to his word, he was waiting outside the boarding house, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt beneath his weathered leather vest. The sight of him made her breath catch unexpectedly. "You look," he began, then seemed to think better of it. "Ready to face the day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, falling into step beside him. Their first stop was the bank, a sturdy brick building that stood as the most imposing structure in town. Inside, they were met with polite but skeptical looks from the manager, Mr. Daniels. "I understand you're the new schoolteacher," he said, examining Josephine over wire-rimmed spectacles. "But we haven't received official confirmation from the school board about your advance." Josephine's hopes sank. "But Mr. Thornton assured me." "Thornton's been out of town for 2 days," Daniels interrupted. "Nothing can be approved until he returns." As they exited the bank, Josephine fought back tears of frustration. What now? Sheriff Tanner won't be as understanding a second time. Isaac guided her gently away from the main street. "Don't lose heart. We've got most of the day left." Their next stop was Mrs. Peterson's kitchen, where the kindly widow listened to their predicament while kneading dough. "I can vouch for your character, dear," she assured Josephine. "But I'm afraid I can't spare any money until my boarders pay their rent at month's end." By midday, they had approached several more potential allies with similar results, plenty of sympathy, but no practical help. They paused for rest beneath the shade of a cottonwood tree near the edge of town. "Perhaps I should just face whatever punishment comes," Josephine sighed, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. "I don't want you getting into trouble on my account." Isaac shook his head firmly. "That's not happening. There's still one option we haven't considered." "What's that?" "I've been saving to buy a small plot of land outside town. It's not much, but it would cover the debt and then some." Josephine straightened, alarmed. "No, I couldn't possibly accept that." "Your dreams, land can wait," Isaac said simply. "Your freedom can't." The quiet determination in his voice silenced her objections. Something unspoken passed between them, a connection that defied their brief acquaintance. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know enough." Their eyes held for a moment longer than propriety allowed. Josephine looked away first, her cheeks flushing. "Let's make one more attempt before resorting to that," she suggested. "The new doctor in town, Dr. Williams, I've heard he's a fair-minded man." The doctor's office was a small whitewashed building near the church. They found him tending to a young boy with a splinted arm. Come in," he called cheerfully when they knocked on the open door. After finishing with his patient, he turned his attention to them. "What can I do for you folks today?" They explained their situation, and to their surprise, the doctor listened with genuine interest. "As it happens," he said when they'd finished, "I was at Hoffman's yesterday morning and overheard your exchange, Miss Lawson. You're absolutely right, he did agree to extend credit. I was examining some herbs he sells while waiting for my own bread. Relief washed over Josephine. Would you be willing to tell Sheriff Tanner that? Better yet, the doctor replied, reaching for his coat. I'll accompany you now. Hoffman's always had a selective memory when it comes to business matters. With Dr. Williams beside them, they confronted Hoffman in his bakery. The baker's face paled when the doctor recounted what he'd witnessed. I might have misremembered the circumstances, Hoffman admitted reluctantly. Sheriff Tanner, summoned by the commotion, listened to all sides before delivering his verdict. Seems to me there's been a misunderstanding, he concluded. No charges will be filed. But Miss Lawson, I suggest you settle your accounts promptly in the future. Yes, Sheriff, Josephine agreed, barely containing her relief. As they left the bakery, Dr. Williams tipped his hat and departed, leaving Josephine and Isaac standing in the afternoon sunlight. The crisis had passed, but something unresolved lingered between them. It seems I'm no longer in your debt, Josephine said, though the words felt hollow. Isaac studied her face, his expression unreadable. Never were, as far as I'm concerned. What happens now? She asked, suddenly afraid this would be their parting. Now, he said thoughtfully, I'd say we both deserve a proper meal after all this excitement. Would you do me the honor of joining me at the hotel restaurant? I hear they serve a decent steak on Wednesdays. The invitation made her heart leap. I'd like that very much. Over dinner, they discovered the ease of conversation that comes when two solitary souls recognize something of themselves in another. Josephine learned that Isaac had spent years working cattle drives across the territories before deciding to put down roots. He'd chosen Redemption Springs after passing through once and being struck by its peaceful setting nestled against the mountains. What about you? He asked as they lingered over coffee. What brought you here of all places? Josephine traced the rim of her cup. After my parents died of influenza when I was 12, my uncle raised me on his ranch in Colorado. He taught me to read and value education. When the drought took his land 4 years ago, I knew I needed to make my own way. I got my teaching certificate in Denver and have been moving from town to town since then. Looking for something, Isaac observed. A place that feels like home, she admitted. Somewhere I belong. Their eyes met across the table, and the possibility that they might have found that very thing hung unspoken between them. The following weeks brought a rhythm to their growing relationship. Josephine began her teaching position, quickly winning the hearts of her students with her passionate approach to learning. Isaac found steady work as a ranch hand at the Collier property just outside town, using his wages to slowly rebuild his savings. They met whenever their schedules allowed for Sunday picnics by the creek, evening walks as the summer heat relented, or quiet conversations on the boarding house porch while Mrs. Peterson pretended not to eavesdrop from behind her curtains. It was during one such evening in late August that Isaac first kissed her. The sunset had painted the sky in spectacular hues, and a cool breeze carried the promise of the coming autumn. I've been thinking, he said, his voice low and serious. A dangerous pastime, she teased gently. His smile was brief before his expression grew earnest. When I saw you that day, being wrongfully accused, something inside me just knew you were innocent, knew you were special. Josephine's heart quickened. I felt it too. Like we'd met before, in some other life perhaps. I don't have much to offer yet, he continued, taking her hand in his. But I'm saving every penny. That plot of land I mentioned, it's beautiful, Josephine. Enough space for a small house, maybe a few horses. Room to grow. She understood what he wasn't quite asking. It sounds perfect. It could be, he agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. With you there. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally parted, breathless and flushed, Josephine knew with absolute certainty that she'd found her home at last. Their courtship flourished as autumn transformed the landscape. The cottonwoods turned golden, and the distant mountains took on their first dusting of snow. For Josephine, who had known so much loss and loneliness, the simple joy of having someone to share the changing seasons with felt like an undeserved blessing. But shadows from Isaac's past were about to intrude on their happiness. The stranger arrived on the eastbound stage in early October, a well-dressed man with cold eyes who asked pointed questions about Isaac Adler at the saloon. Sheriff Tanner, now on friendly terms with both Isaac and Josephine, Sent word to the ranch where Isaac was working. Says his name is Marshall Reeves. The sheriff explained when Isaac came to his office that evening. Claims he's looking for his former business partner. Isaac's expression darkened. I know no one by that name. He seemed mighty interested in finding you. Said something about unfinished business in Wyoming. Josephine, who had been invited to join them by the concerned sheriff, saw the tension in Isaac's shoulders. What business in Wyoming? For a moment, it seemed Isaac might not answer. Then he sighed heavily. 2 years ago, I was working for a cattle baron named Reeves. His son, Edwin, was embezzling from the company. I discovered the theft and confronted him privately, offering him a chance to come clean to his father. Instead, he tried to frame me for the crime. Did you clear your name? Sheriff Tanner asked. I thought so. I showed the elder Reeves the evidence of his son's guilt before I left. Last I heard, Edwin had been disowned. Josephine reached for his hand. Then why would anyone be looking for you now? I don't know, Isaac admitted. But I intend to find out. The confrontation came sooner than expected. As they left the sheriff's office, Edwin Reeves himself stepped from the shadows across the street, his hand hovering near his holster. Adler, he called. You ruined my life. The street cleared quickly as townsfolk recognized the makings of a confrontation. Isaac pushed Josephine gently toward the sheriff's office doorway. Stay back, he murmured. To Reeves, he called. You ruined your own life, Edwin. What do you want? My father died last month, Reeves spat. Left everything to my younger brother because of your meddling. You took my inheritance. Your dishonesty took your inheritance. Isaac replied evenly. I'm sorry about your father, but I had nothing to do with his decisions. Reeves's face contorted with rage. You'll pay for what you did. His hand dropped to his gun, but Sheriff Tanner's voice rang out. That's enough. There'll be no gunplay in my town. The moment hung suspended, with Reeves clearly weighing his options. Finally, his hand moved away from his weapon. This isn't over, Adler, he growled before stalking toward the saloon. That night, Isaac and Josephine sat in the quiet of Mrs. Peterson's parlor, the encounter with Reeves casting a pall over their usual warmth. He won't leave town without causing trouble, Isaac said, staring into the fire. Men like that don't let go of grievances. What will you do? Josephine asked, fear gnawing at her newfound happiness. What I should have done 2 years ago, face him directly rather than just walking away. He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. But first, there's something I need to ask you. From his pocket, he withdrew a simple gold band, modest, but undeniably a ring meant for a specific purpose. I was planning to wait until I had the land secured, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But today reminded me that time isn't guaranteed. I love you, Josephine Lawson. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to her eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, a promise made tangible. They sealed it with a kiss that held both passion and the sweetness of new beginnings. Whatever comes next, we face it together, she said firmly. The following days passed in an anxious limbo. Reeves maintained a menacing presence in town, drinking heavily at the saloon but making no direct moves against Isaac. Sheriff Tanner kept a watchful eye on the situation, increasing his patrols and warning Reeves against causing disturbances. Josephine continued teaching, though she often caught herself glancing out the schoolhouse window, half expecting trouble to arrive at any moment. Each evening, Isaac escorted her home before returning to the ranch, their partings growing more difficult as the threat lingered. We could leave, Josephine suggested one evening as they walked along the creek. Start fresh somewhere else. Isaac shook his head. Running would only postpone the inevitable. Besides, we've both found home here. I won't let him take that from us. The resolution came on a frost-covered morning in late October. Josephine was writing arithmetic problems on the blackboard when the schoolhouse door burst open. Edwin Reeves stumbled in, clearly intoxicated despite the early hour, a revolver dangling from his hand. The children froze in terror as Josephine stepped protectively in front of them. Mr. Reeves, you need to leave immediately, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. These are children. Where's Adler? He slurred. I know he visits you. He's working at the Collier Ranch. Please, take your grievance there, not to my classroom. Something in her calm authority seemed to penetrate his drunken haze. He blinked, suddenly aware of the young faces staring at him in fear. "Tell him I'm done waiting," Reeves muttered, backing toward the door. "High noon tomorrow, in the main street. If he doesn't show, I'll burn down everything he cares about, starting with this schoolhouse." After he stumbled out, Josephine quickly dismissed the children, sending the oldest boy to alert Sheriff Tanner while she herself raced toward the Collier ranch. She found Isaac mending fences in the north pasture, his shirt damp with exertion despite the cool air. His face darkened as she related Reeves's threat. "He threatened children," Isaac said, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's where I draw the line." "You can't meet him for a gunfight," Josephine protested. "It's barbaric." "I don't intend to," Isaac assured her, gathering his tools. "But I am going to end this, today." Together they rode back to town, finding Sheriff Tanner already organizing a posse to arrest Reeves for threatening the school. But the man had vanished after leaving the saloon, taking his horse and supplies. "We'll find him," Sheriff Tanner promised. "No one threatens our school children and gets away with it." As dusk approached with no sign of Reeves, Isaac insisted on staying the night at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house for Josephine's protection. The widow happily arranged an impromptu dinner party with Dr. Williams and the sheriff as additional guests, providing a semblance of propriety to the arrangement. After the others retired, Isaac and Josephine sat together on the porch swing, the cool night air wrapping around them like a blanket. "When this is over," Isaac said softly, "I'd like to show you the land I've been saving for. It's just 4 miles north, with a view of the mountains that takes your breath away at sunset." Josephine leaned against his shoulder. "I'd like that. There's a clearing perfect for building a house, and a little stream running through the western edge that never runs dry, even in August. It sounds like paradise." "It will be," he promised. "Our paradise." They sat in comfortable silence, envisioning the future they would build together once the shadow of Reeves had passed. Morning brought no sign of their adversary, though Sheriff Tanner posted deputies throughout town as a precaution. Isaac accompanied Josephine to the schoolhouse, checking every corner before allowing the children inside. As noon approached, the town grew unnaturally quiet, with most businesses closed and streets emptied in anticipation of potential violence. But noon came and went without Reeves's appearance. By mid-afternoon, a tentative sense of relief began to spread. "Perhaps he's moved on," Josephine suggested hopefully as Isaac walked her home after school. "Perhaps," Isaac agreed, though his vigilance never wavered. The answer came at sunset, when a ranch hand from Collier's property galloped into town with alarming news. The eastern pasture had been set ablaze, and a man matching Reeves's description had been seen riding away. "He's drawing me out there," Isaac realized aloud. Away from town, away from help. Sheriff Tanner immediately organized firefighting efforts, but turned to Isaac with concern. "You should stay here where it's safe." This could be exactly what he wants. "Those men need every hand they can get to control that fire," Isaac argued. "I can't hide while their livelihood burns." Josephine gripped his arm. "Then I'm coming too." "Absolutely not," both men said in unison. "I won't sit here waiting to hear if you've been shot," she insisted. "I can help with the fire or tend to injuries. Dr. Williams will need assistance." Her determination won out, and soon they were riding with a wagon full of water barrels toward the orange glow on the horizon. The scene at the ranch was chaotic, cowboys forming bucket lines while others used wet blankets to beat back flames threatening to reach the barn. Isaac immediately joined the firefighting efforts, his powerful frame moving tirelessly between tasks. Josephine helped Dr. Williams establish a treatment area for those suffering smoke inhalation or burns. Hours passed as they battled the blaze. By midnight, they had contained the worst of it, saving the barn and most of the livestock, though several acres of pasture lay blackened and smoldering. It was while helping a young ranch hand with a scalded arm that Josephine noticed movement at the edge of the firefighter's lantern light, a shadowy figure watching from the tree line. Without thinking, she followed, certain it was Reeves. The night air grew cooler as she moved away from the fire's warmth. "I know you're there," she called. "This has to stop." Edwin Reeves stepped from behind a cottonwood tree, his face ghostly in the moonlight. "It stops when he pays," he said, his voice surprisingly sober. "An eye for an eye." "He didn't take anything from you," Josephine reasoned, maintaining her distance. Your own actions cost you your inheritance. He should have minded his own business. Reeves spat. Who appointed him judge of my character? The same person who's made you judge of his, apparently. Josephine took a careful step forward. This won't bring back what you've lost. It will only add more regret to your burden. Something in her words seemed to reach him. His shoulders sagged slightly. What would you have me do? He asked, more weary than angry now. Leave Redemption Springs, she said gently. Start fresh somewhere. Prove your father wrong by becoming a better man than he believed you could be. For a moment, it seemed he might consider her counsel. Then his expression hardened once more. Too late for that, he muttered, reaching for his holster. Josephine, get down. Isaac's voice shattered the moment as he charged from the darkness, tackling Reeves before he could draw his weapon. The two men crashed to the ground, grappling fiercely. Reeves managed to land a solid blow to Isaac's jaw before Isaac pinned him with superior strength. It's over, Edwin, Isaac growled, restraining the struggling man. You've lost everything else. Don't lose your life too. Sheriff Tanner arrived with 2 deputies, quickly securing Reeves in handcuffs. Arson and attempted murder, the sheriff listed grimly. That'll earn you a long stay in territorial prison. As they led Reeves away, he called back over his shoulder. This isn't justice. My father would have, your father would be ashamed, Isaac interrupted. Not of your mistakes, but of your refusal to own them and move forward. The words struck home in a way physical force never could. Reeves's resistance crumbled visibly, and he allowed himself to be led away without further struggle. In the aftermath, Isaac pulled Josephine into a fierce embrace, his heart pounding against hers. What were you thinking? He demanded, his voice raw with fear. He could have killed you. I was thinking he was a man in pain, she answered simply. Sometimes that's all it takes, someone willing to see the person behind the anger. Isaac shook his head in wonder. You continue to amaze me, Josephine Lawson. I believe you could tame the wildest heart with that compassionate spirit of yours. I only want to tame one heart, she replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him beneath the vast starlit sky. 2 weeks later, with Reeves safely behind bars awaiting trial, Isaac finally took Josephine to see his land. The November day was crisp but sunny as they crested a gentle rise on horseback, revealing a natural plateau overlooking a valley carpeted with tall grass. There it is, Isaac said proudly. Officially ours as of yesterday. Josephine gasped at the beauty spread before them, the distant mountains, the meandering stream, the sheltering grove of pines that would break the winter winds. It's perfect, she breathed, dismounting to feel the earth beneath her boots. Absolutely perfect. Isaac joined her, taking her hand. I thought we might build there, he said, pointing to a level area near the pines. The schoolhouse is just a 40-minute ride. Close enough for convenience, but far enough for privacy. When can we start? She asked eagerly. The wedding first, he insisted with a smile. Mrs. Peterson would never forgive us if we did things out of order. They were married on Christmas Eve in the town church, with seemingly all of Redemption Springs in attendance. Josephine wore a gown of ivory silk ordered specially from Denver, while Isaac cut a handsome figure in a new black suit. Dr. Williams served as best man, and several of Josephine's students scattered flower petals along the aisle. Sheriff Tanner gave the bride away with uncharacteristic emotion, having become something of a father figure to them both in the months since the bread incident. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was a promise of all they would build together, not just a home, but a life rich with purpose and love. Spring brought the construction of their house, with neighbors and friends raising the frame in a community effort that culminated in a celebratory feast on their new property. By summer's arrival, the modest but sturdy home stood completed, with a wide porch facing the mountains just as Isaac had envisioned. Their first anniversary found Josephine still teaching, now with an assistant as her advancing pregnancy made the daily ride increasingly challenging. Isaac had established a small but thriving horse breeding operation, his expertise with the animals drawing buyers from as far away as Colorado. Are you happy? He asked her one evening as they sat on their porch swing, watching the spectacular sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Josephine, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their child grew, considered the question seriously. I used to think happiness was finding a place where I belonged, she said thoughtfully. Now I know it's finding the person I belong with. Isaac's hand covered hers, feeling the flutter of movement beneath her skin. To think it all started with a loaf of bread. And a cowboy brave enough to stand for truth, she added with a smile. If you're guilty, then so am I forever. He quoted himself, the words now a cherished family story. Little did I know how true that would become. Forever, Josephine agreed, leaning into his embrace as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. That's exactly how long I plan to be guilty of loving you. Their lips met in the gathering twilight, sealing once more the promise that had begun on a dusty street with an act of justice and blossomed into a love that would endure through all the seasons of their lives together in this wild, beautiful land they now called home.